Good evening and welcome. I am MathNut, and tonight I bring you a treat. I will be commentating on the Keyforge Events Sealed Deck Tournament on the Crucible. And I'm slightly out of breath because I just ran all through the house. My apologies for that. Tonight's event is being sponsored by Burger Tokens, Tabletop Legion, and Orbits. Burger Tokens and Orbits are both Keyforge token manufacturers, and Tabletop Legion is a deck box manufacturer. They're all small third-party people, but they're all good people, and they sponsor these events, giving prizes to the winners. Tonight's is, I believe, a token set from Orbits. So, you join us, or join me, already watching a game in progress. This is DMC Key versus Takuso. Their decks are Captain Four-Eye Shield, which is Mars, Shadows, and Untamed, versus Ivan Il Grotto Prodigo del Estuzio. Spanish, and I'm not even going to pretend like I pronounced that correctly. So, thus far, the match is looking to be in favor of DMC Key. I should probably tell them they're on the stream. DMC Key has jumped out to an early lead with a lot of powerful amber generation through his Untamed faction. I will not be showing you the decks tonight. Normally, when doing something like this, I would show each deck and talk about it, but given the sealed deck nature of this event, and the fact that the opponents could, but won't necessarily, look at the decks, I think it's best just to let things lie. Obviously, we're looking at board state now, where Takuso is certainly coming out ahead, having 3 creatures to 1. And Brobnar is pretty powerful, especially with the Gauntlet of Command, letting him activate and fight with off-faction creatures, or a Brobnar creature played just from the hand that turn. Or possibly even a Brobnar creature twice in one turn, like a Fire Spitter. I don't see any of that here, but it is certainly a strong possibility that we will see that happen throughout this game. Now, DMC Key is back at 6 Amber, and is hoping to be able to forge his first key. Takuso, with these 3 factions, every faction has some amber control. Certainly Crump could do it whenever he kills a creature and lives. The controller of that creature would lose an amber. So if he could come and, say, kill the Dust Pixie, that would cost DMC Key the amber, and prevent the Keyforge from happening. However, he calls Logos. Options that would prevent DMC Key from forging a key there would be... Oh, I say Logos. He calls Brobnar. Sorry. Past that... Okay, so he throws Hebe the Huge into the Dominator, and then he could use the Gauntlet of Command to hit Schuler into the Dominator, killing the Dominator, removing the taunt that's protecting the Dust Pixie, and then allowing Crump to eat the Dust Pixie. He could also do it with Gangur Chieftain, saving the Gauntlet of Command for an extra reap at the end of all of this. Honestly, whether he did it through the Chieftain or the Gauntlet didn't really matter. That cost takes away the Amber, and now he uses the Gauntlet of Command. Keyforge has a activation rule that states simply, you do as much as possible on the card, and in this case it would be ready, and then fighting with the creature can't happen because there are no other creatures on the board, so the card just remains in a ready state. By the way, https://twitch.tv/mathnut. Okay, so DMC Key is following up with more powerful Untamed play. with a Witch of the Wild, which is at this point not nearly as good as it would have been earlier in the game with different distribution, and a Murmook. Murmook simply makes the opponent's keys more expensive. It's not a terribly beefy creature. Witch of the Wilds lets him play an untamed card every single turn, regardless of what house he is called. The reason I said that's not terribly useful here is because he has already played 6, 7, 8 untamed cards. There are only 12 untamed cards in the deck. Oh, and DMC Key made a mistake with combat pheromones. Obviously did not mean to use that, because it allows him to activate Mars creatures, or cards, rather. Creatures or artifacts. But since there were no Mars creatures or artifacts on the board, it was a pure waste. And it's a sacrifice this card to use it, so it's gone. Takuso is turning around and trying to regain board control with a couple of damaging actions. Deposit on Bolt, which hits a creature for 3, and then the next creature for 2, and then the next creature away for 1 if it had existed. In this case, he did 3 damage to the Witch of the Wild and 2 to Murmook, and followed that up with Twin Bolt Emission to deal 2 damage to 2 creatures, thereby clearing the board. And then he plays Pit Lord. Pit Lord is a rather interesting play here. It means that he is now forced to call Dis. Oh, he plays Pit Lord. He Wild Wormholed the Pit Lord into play because he was on Logos. So Wild Wormhole popped out the Pit Lord, forcing him henceforth to call Dis. Not going to be terrible, probably. He's only seen 4 of his discards, compared to, or I guess 5 when you count Pit Lord, compared to 6 of his Brobnar and 6 of his Logos. So it's likely he has Dis in his hand. I just accidentally alt-tabbed myself. DMC Key's going to play out a second Mother Gun. Did he use the first Mother Gun? Yes, he did. He revealed some cards from his hand, get 3 damage on the board, throwing it at Crump to try and protect his Amber Pool from before. Martians make bad allies. Looks like it was just played blind. There was no non-Mars creatures in his hand to gain any Amber from, so he didn't lose anything. It just got it out of his hand. Play or discard that one. Doesn't matter if your hand doesn't have Mars. Now we see Takuso. We know that he's going to be calling Dis for his active house, because he doesn't have a choice, and he does in fact forge his first key. Drops out a Toxin. Toxin is a high priority kill target. Ooh, he has 2 Toxins, because it takes out cards from your hand at random. So unlike, say, a Succubus that just prevents you from drawing cards, it actually denies you the ability to use the cards that you have had in your hand. And then a Restricting Guntus. Restricting Guntus picks a house, and as long as Restricting Guntus stays in play, his opponent cannot play that house. So DMC Key is blocked from Shadows, which is painful, because he has yet to call a Shadow's turn, which means more than likely his hand is building up a stockpile of Shadows that he now will not be able to call and use. I would expect him probably to call Mars with the 2 Mother Guns on the board, and he does call Mars. 1 Mother Gun can easily take out Restricting Guntus, and the second one maybe can take out one of the Toxins. There's a Mother Gun revealing. What does he reveal? He has to show a card to use the Mother Gun. Reveal any number of Mars cards. Then deal damage to a creature equal to the number of Mars cards revealed. So if he's using it, he's going to reveal at least 1. To take out Restricting Guntus, he only has to show 1. Oh no, he throws it on Crump. Ooh, I'm not sure that was a great play. I don't know what's in his hand, obviously, but I suspect he has a stockpile of Shadows. Just so you know, I will be keeping an eye on my Twitch chat off and on. I don't have it currently pinned to my screen anywhere, so it goes back behind and I can lose track of it pretty easily. So if I don't reply to you or say something immediately, Be patient. I will eventually see it. So I have to say, Takuso, after that turn, feels like he has a very dominant position. He did manage to kill off Crump by using both Mother Guns with Jammer Pack one at a time. And then he played out the Jammer Pack for the Amber that comes with it. And makes Takuso's keys more expensive. Unfortunately, with the Dominator already having 8 damage on it, I don't think it's going to live long enough to make that fact that the keys are more expensive matter in the slightest. And I missed it a previous turn. Takuso did throw the Pit Demon or Pit Lord at the Dominator, where the 8 damage came from, and why Pit Lord is no longer on the board, and he has the ability again to call whichever faction he wants. DMC Key does get to forge his first key, though, so despite the board state being kind of sketchy, DMC Key is now tied up in the only thing that actually matters, and the number of keys forged. Calling Mars again, having had to discard 2 cards from the Toxins, means he's very likely not got much in the way of options. He did end up discarding 2 Shadows cards, which is not terribly surprising. He has a Yixley Marauder in his hand, so he'll be getting to capture one of Takuso's 5 Ember. Throws the damage on Restricting Guntus. Still kind of surprised he didn't do that last time. I think Restricting Guntus was a higher priority target than Crump. I could be wrong, but in the way the board was set up, it felt that way. Yixlik's Dominator goes ahead, and I assume he reaps. Yes, he does reap with that, capturing or gaining an Amber. So it is now 4 Amber to 1, and 1 key all. So Takuso looks like he's ahead a bit on the board. The Mother Guns are not going to do a lot of good because there's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8 Mars cards played by my count. That means there's only 4 left out of the 18 cards he has. Mobius Scroll. Mobius Scroll is one of my favorite cards because it's math related. Mobius Band is a band that has one side because it has a twist in the middle in the 3rd dimension, using 3-dimensional topology to manipulate 2-dimensional shapes and objects. Very fun and interesting concept. I should probably stop talking about it and keep talking about Keyforge, though. Let's see here. Beyond that, he played out a tight mechanic, making his keys 1 cheaper, and did some reaping to get to himself to 8 Amber, and played Scrambler Storm. So that, that's painful. So, any action cards that he might have had, like Bait and Switch, which would be great right here with an 8 to 1 advantage, or disadvantage, he cannot play because of the Scrambler Storm. That is very important because Shadows has so many actions that steal Amber. The biggest and most notable of which is, of course, Bait and Switch. And we see that he, I believe, chooses to discard the Poison Wave since he can't play it. And it wouldn't have done much to this board state. It would have killed one of the Toxins. And Takuso forges his 2nd key. Also, I'm going to assume that everybody playing is male unless they tell me otherwise. That's just what the preponderance of evidence suggests to me about any online gamer. I know there are ladies that game, and more power to them. I appreciate them. That having been said, my experience leads me to believe that most people are male, and I will be referring to anyone I watch as a he. Alright, Ember Imp comes down. I think this is starting to spell the end for DMC Key. Ember Imp restricts him to only playing 2 cards per turn. With this board state, unless he's got a board wipe, which he could, in these factions, an Ammonia Wave would be, or a Ammonia Cloud would be pretty strong. 3 damage to every creature on the board. I'm actually trying to think of more good board clears out of these three factions. There is Save the Pack, but that's not going to do much with this board because you got to be able to put damage on creatures to use Save the Pack. He calls Mars, uses his Mother Gun, which means he has at least one Mars card. He has two, another Dominator, and a Bolter. Does he have 3 Dominators in this deck? Holy smokes. That's a lot of power. It's slow to utilize power because they come into play stunned, but that's still quite a bit of power. And he blows the Ember Imp away. Ember Imp is a high priority target, and I expect him to blow away Toxin. And he does it a Titan mechanic. Ooh. Takuso is on 6 Amber, so right now Takuso only needs 5 Amber to forge a key, so killing the Titan mechanic would be beneficial, but I don't know that he's going to be able to both kill the Titan mechanic and capture or steal or remove an Ember. And he, in fact, cannot. That passes turn and ends the game. All right. That was a round 1 game. Let us move on and see if there are any other games going on. In Group A, we see that Duncan has beaten Chunky Queso 1-0. Presumably that means either Duncan didn't know to put in the actual key results, or Chunky Queso had to leave for some reason. Let's see if we can find Viper versus Pokalope. Viper versus Pokalope. Come on, Crucible. Well, that's not pulling up. While that's not pulling up, I will state once again that tonight's tournament is being sponsored by Arbits, Aurbits, of Arbits.com. They sell Keyforge tokens, and you can purchase them to augment your collection and gameplay experience. I have a set of damage tokens myself coming in because I always seem to run out of, particularly the ones of the damage tokens, and they look like they are going to be of pretty stout quality. Keyforge Events is also sponsored by Tabletop Legion, who makes deck boxes, and Burger Tokens, who makes other high quality tokens in larger sets. Well, let me see if I can get any of these matches to load. I'm going to have to refresh the Crucible Online, I think. Alright, so let's go look at, who was I looking at? Viper and Pokalope. Password is KFE. So let's see how this match is shaping up. Pokalope and Viper are currently tied at 1 key apiece. 5-3. Let me let them know. Let them know that they are on stream. Pokalope is on Brobnar, Sanctum, and Mars. And Viper is on Dis, Shadows, and Mars. The board states at a glance look pretty even. Looking at Pokalope, he's got Earthshaker in play. It has it coming into playability, so if he's got something like a War Drummer, it can come back. I'll come back to the Timeless Crag. We've got Smash with a Protect the Weak, giving him Taunt and that piece of armor that you see. He's not going to be doing much. Any stiff breeze will kill him right now. And in fact, he smashes into the Dominator that was on Viper's side, taking it off the board. Blipip or Blypip or Blypipe or however you want to pronounce any of the Mars cards, I will say that is your prerogative, is a powerful Mars engine card, allowing you to play extra Mars creatures in a ready state so they can be used. And most every Mars creature, almost every, except for the big heavy hitters, like the Dominator, have a reap ability on them. I say that. The Marauder also does not have a reap. But him coming into play, he counts as a ready Mars creature, and his playability gets a little bit stronger. On the other side of the board, we have... Oh, and Bulwark. Bulwark is one of my... What I think is one of the strongest all-around Sanctum cards, giving neighbors armor. I would rather have Shadow Self most of the time, but Bulwark is certainly a powerful card. On the other side, we have a Raiding Knight that has been stolen from Pokalope, and a couple, or a Dust Imp and a Pit Demon, with a Mother Gun in support and a Subtle Maul. So it is currently now Pokalope's turn. Viper is on 8 Ember, so Pokalope, if he wants to do anything, needs to take out at least 3 Amber, or find some way to make keys more expensive in some combination of 3. Shatterstorm would be well... Or is it Shatterstorm? I think it's Shatterstorm. The Mars card that causes you lose all your Ember and your opponent loses 3 times that amount would be overkill here because he's at 5. Robnar could do something like play a pile of skulls and then attack a couple times. Tireless, so he calls Mars. Mars has a few things that capture Ember, like the Marauder. He plays Blipip, or Blipip, or uses Blipip to reap, putting him at 6, puts out Tunk. And then Tunk takes out the Pit Demon to remove the steal ability that Viper had. Follows up with a Dominator, and then fights with Tireless Crocag, because Tireless Crocag can always be used, but it can only be used to fight. And if this creature were to die, Tireless Crocag would also die, because he dies anytime the opponent has no creatures. So while Viper looks like he's going to get to forge his second key, the board state heavily favors Pokalope. That having been said, with Dis, board state is not a permanent effect. Gateway to Dis, I haven't even looked at his discard to see how many discards he's played. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He could easily have a Gateway to Dis or Hysteria, which would very rapidly change this board state. And he's already at 2 Ember, and as basically whenever he wants to can get 2 more by calling Dis and throwing the Dust Imp into anything. I missed how Blipip got... Martian Hounds. Okay. Like, I missed how Blipip got Pid's 2 power. Chooses Shadows. Uses a Nerve Blast to damage... What do you damage with Nerve Blast? Oh, he took Blipip's armor away. Blipip being that strong is going to be a problem. But he does get enough steel with the Urchin to drop Pokalope back below 6. And now it is once again Pokalope's turn, and Viper's deck has been reshuffled. Pokalope's deck appears to have been reshuffled last turn, and I neglected to mention that. So now it's on Pokalope. With the 3 Mars cards on the board, Mars wouldn't be a bad call, but not spectacular. Since I lost his discard, he could have any number of Mars cards in his hand now. If he has any, the Blipip makes them come into play. Any creatures, it comes into play ready. Could very easily get himself back up to 6 plus Amber, but I don't know how much board control he's going to be able to do. He could attack with Tunk and then heal it off, and kill Bad Penny. I don't know if that's really a great play, but leaving the two Shadows creatures on the board is also asking for him to call Shadows and just reap. And he does call Mars. He plays out a Mother Gun and Combat Pheromones, gaining an Ember, putting himself back at 6. Clears the stun. Now the problem is Viper is sitting really close to his 6. Dust Imp cannot be killed here, because that would give him the 6 that he needs. I don't know how much Amber control this deck is going to have. Even though his board state is superior, board state isn't everything in Keyforge. And you can easily lose the game with superior board state just because the goal of the game is to get the Amber to forge the keys. If you don't have the Amber control, and your opponent can get the Amber through other means than board state, like play abilities on creatures, or actions like the Nerve Toxin. That's just going to go further and further towards getting the game, even though you've conceded board state. He calls House Dis, which means this guy's probably going to throw himself blindly at a creature. Or possibly will be Gateway to Dis, which might be even worse. Will not be Gateway to Dis because he's played a Dis creature now. And Dust Imp does in fact throw himself to death against the Krokag. And Drumble pops out to steal, capture. Shouldn't say steal. Capture all 7 Amber that Pokalope had. And Pokalope concedes, and there's the good game. Alright. And that is that game completed. Let us go take a look at the bracket and refresh it. Okay, Duncan has gone back and updated this correctly. Now is 3 keys to none. We know that game is complete. Zaxram has beaten the Dude. No, but I see the Dude every time I see that name. Poto Freak has beaten Arcano 0-0. So there's another one where he didn't realize to put the actual key numbers in. Justin Rogers, I'm going to say that's Justin Rogers, has beaten Dragoon K. Katan. And Sith of Angarmar has beaten King Gerda. Bizarro David has beaten Matt Stout. Takuso, we already saw. We watched that match. Judge BM has beaten Shred Mackinaw. And Necroflux has beaten Lupus. And on and on and on. I believe that means every game of round 1 has been completed. So I'm going to state once again that tonight's tournament is being sponsored by Orbits. And the winner will be getting a set of Orbits tokens as their prize. Also sponsoring Keyforge events are Burger Tokens and Tabletop Legion. I'm now going to step out of the room for just a second to go grab a Dr. Pepper that I meant to grab before this started. I will be throwing the Orbits link, copy link, into my little chat window for the moment. And I will be right back. All right. So we will refresh this and go and find another match that will probably have already started. Let's hop down here into the bottom of the list in competitive games. We just watched Viper. I will be going for a different game. This one is the Dude versus Arc. Well, let's go with a winning match. Zackstrom and Poto Freak. There's Zackstrom and Poto Freak. And KFE. Watch. Alright, so here we have Poto Freak playing Fleece Weaver, the Ripper Malcontent, and Zackstrom playing Beba D Porcio Dirt the Fifth. Porcio Dirt the Fifth. I'm not entirely sure why Zackstrom said hi, Dad. In any event, we have Zackstrom playing Brobnar, Sanctum, and Shadows. I have to say, I think that it may be, in general, the strongest house combination out there, except maybe Dis Sanctum Shadows. I think Shadows is the strongest support faction, and I think Sanctum is probably the all-around best faction. That having been said, we also see that Poto Freak has Dis, Shadows, and Untamed. Plenty of opportunities in Untamed to compete, and I say the faction analysis as a general, there are certainly Untamed stacks that are really powerful. But as for the board state, we've got two artifacts in play, a Seeker Needle and Skeleton Key, neither of which are going to be particularly Master Plan, particularly useful with this board state, because there's no Ember on Zackstrom, so the Skeleton Key doesn't do any good. And Seeker Needle is going to ping something and can be almost immediately healed by Protectrix. Protectrix, whenever he reaps, he gets to heal a creature, and then that creature can't be damaged for the rest of the turn. Creature does actually have to be healed, though. You can't use it on, say, Sergeant Zekiel and then attack because Sergeant Zekiel has no damage. But the Master Plan makes things interesting. One of my favorite plays with Master Plan in a Dis deck is to throw an Arise under that, and then wait for some big board wipe and pull back all of your faction immediately. We'll see what this ends up being, but the Master Plan is certainly something to take into account. Terms of Redress captures a couple of Amber, and then throws both creatures in an attack against Nexus. Nexus has to be attacked twice because of the elusive. Meaning that turn feels slightly wasted. Yes, he took 2 Amber and gained 1 from the Terms of Redress, but didn't really gain much on the Amber front and only managed to kill off 1 creature. It was more of a kind of passive turn than I would have expected this early in the game. On the other hand, he does have a dominant board state with the Troll and Protectrix and Sergeant Zekiel. And Save the Pack comes down, killing off both of those Sanctum creatures. Really again, feeling like the option that he had there was not the greatest. But with the Nexus kill, because that put damage on both of his creatures, letting that Save the Pack be much more effective. The Seeker Needle comboing with Save the Pack is quite nice, though. And he plays out an Urchin, which I think was a mistake. What else did he play out of Shadows? He played Routine Job, which at that point in time Photo Freak did have two, so both of those did get to steal one, but then the Secret Needle kills the urchin immediately and gains him an amber back. Skeleton Key then captures one on the Snufflegator, who also gets a Dusk Runner on him. That's probably more to play the card out of his hand than it is for really being an ideal creature for that. Snufflegator with Skirmish is much better suited to attacking, although there's not really a target to attack in this board. Zaxxam then chooses Brobnar and fights with Umbra using, I assume, an Anger. Yes. Anger, ready to fight with a friendly creature, gain an Ember. Sound the Horns. What did he manage to pull with Sound the Horns? Put it into your hand. So he put a Brobnar creature in his hand. Oh no, he just discarded Sound the Horns. He apparently has something in his deck that he hasn't seen yet that he doesn't want to end up discarding. Like a bait and switch. Playing Sound the Horns, even though it gives you a better board state here because you get a Brobnar creature, so you're guaranteed to be able to play it. Master Plan had Gateway to Dis under it, so that's a board wipe, which is obviously quite powerful. It does give 3 chains, so he'll only be drawing up to 5 cards for the next 3 draw phases, but plays a ton of discards and forces his opponent to choose Brobnar, knowing that he could have at most 1 Brobnar card, and he did. He had Crump. But because of the Sound the Horns discard, I guess he could have had 2. His opponent played Anger as well that turn, so played 2 cards, so he only got to draw 2. Would have played any other Brobnar he had. Bounce Crump to his hand with the Snudge, and then just reap across the board, giving him definitive board control. There's a Nerve Blast and Restless Whispers to take out Snudge, because Snudge will repeatedly lock down your board, particularly if you don't have a strong hand to play out a bunch of creatures. And then a second routine job to steal 2, and steals 1 from the Restless Whispers and the Nerve Blast, so he stole 4 that turn and gained 1, which is why you see it now is 10-1. That right there is an example of why I think Shadows is the best support faction. Shadows doesn't do a whole lot to really take control of the board. It has some options like Snack Lifter to control artifacts, Nexus to control artifacts, and Bullet Eye to control flank creatures. But Shadows has so much Amber control. No faction can compete with Shadows for Amber control. So right now we are looking to see what Poto Freak is going to choose. He did get stunned thanks to Blinding Light, all of his disc creatures. What he chooses to do now? Calling Disc probably would have been much stronger before those creatures became stunned. Zaxxam did get to forge his first key thanks to the big steel turn, the previous one. Bait and switch to drop Zaxxam by 2 and pull him up to 2, equalizing their embers and then capturing 1 on an elusive creature, so it's not going to immediately get killed. And Zaxxam plays out Hebe the Huge and a Gauntlet of Command and a Screech Bomb with a Crump. So Brobnar once again throwing down a couple of big creatures, one of which hits the entire board of Poto Freak. Not enough to kill them all, but enough to put some damage on them and make them much easier to kill in the future. Gauntlet of the Command, of course, being able to use out-of-faction creatures to fight with, or newly played in-faction creatures, or use the same creature to fight multiple times. So Crump could fight Nexus, Gauntlet of Command, and then kill Nexus, for an example. Let's see. Past that, Photo Freak is calling Shadows again, flooding Shadow Self to protect the now very damaged Nexus, dropping Silvertooth next to the Shadow Self, and just reaps with him, reaps with Nexus to blow up the Screech Bomb. It is an Omni artifact that you sacrifice when you use it, and it costs your opponent 2 Amber. So Zaxxram is now zeroed out on Amber. Photo Freak is at 6. I do not believe that's going to be sufficient because Crump is on the board with only 1 damage on him. Crump can easily kill off Snufflegator or Niflite to drain an Amber from Photo Freak. Other options are going to have to come from the hand because what's on the board, that's the only way that he can prevent the key from being forged on Photo Freak's next turn. Whether or not that's the best play, I can't say, but it is the only option that I can see that he has available. Of course, he is a Shadows deck, so he could have another Urchin, a 3rd routine job. I don't know how many of the maximum routine jobs you can have in a deck are, but routine job right here would be amazing. He does end up calling Brobnar and going with Crump to kill the Shadow Self. Yeah, so he did a huge attack Shadow Self and then Crump. Crump killed the creature, so he loses an Ember. And then he gauntlets a command to fight with Crump again, killing off the Silvertooth, losing another Amber. So Photo Freak, his board looks nice, but it doesn't have a lot of immediate impact. He's not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with these Brobnar creatures with anything he's got in Untamed or Shadows. And then his 2 disc creatures are both stunned, so even if he calls disc this turn, he's not going to get much value, or he won't get any value out of these 2 disc creatures. Now would be the time to play that Gateway to Disc that he had earlier. That having been said, he could Reap with Nexus to use the Gauntlet command and use Snufflegator to take out Crump. Snufflegator with his skirmish would mean he wouldn't die. That would start to get some control back to him. I don't know what he has in his hand, though. That's the only really good line I see on the board. Because it would let him capture an Amber, put a damage on, I don't know, Protectrix. I guess he could kill Protectrix. I would not advise killing Protectrix because that leaves 3 Brobnar creatures. When I'm trying to control the board like this, it is more important to reduce the strongest faction, so taking out one of the 3 Brobnars instead of taking out just the single Sanctum. And he does end up calling Shadows. Reaps with Nexus, activates the Gauntlet command, fights with Snufflegator, and takes out Crump. And pings. I would either ping Hebe or Protectrix. He does hit Protectrix with that. Captures an Amber. And that's it. So that was a pure board play. He chose not to play anything from his hand, which I find somewhat surprising. Yes, he did need to get some board state under control. That having been said, yeah, something like this was bound to happen. Now he has to call Shadows again because there's 2 rather strong 1-power creatures on the board. He should use Snufflegator to kill the Moon Cursor because Moon Cursor does not have elusive. And then the Seeker Needle to take out Carlos Phantom because he does have elusive. And instead, he takes out Umbra. I'm not sure that was the right decision. Oh, okay. So, and then he uses the Seeker Needle to take out Moon Cursor. Maybe that was the right decision. Because Carlo Phantom, Zaxxram has not shown that his deck has a lot of artifact potential. and it has elusive and skirmish, but it's not going to have a whole lot of impact on the board. Like the other two, where one steals every turn with the skirmish ability, so he wouldn't be taking damage. He'd be doing damage to the board and stealing. And then, of course, Moon Cursor steals and just kills something that has no armor. So yeah, I think that was probably better than the play I had in mind. And he still got his Seeker Needle Amber from killing the Moon Cursor. He plays out a potion. Zaxxon plays out a potion of invulnerability, having called Sanctum. Potion of invulnerability does exactly what it sounds like it does. You sacrifice it on a later turn, and each friendly creature is immune to damage. Protectrix fights Nexus, and then Inspiration to ready Protectrix, or ready Carlos Phantom, and use that 1 damage to finish off Nexus, because Nexus already had 2 from the Hebe the Huge play earlier. Getting Nexus off the board and protecting his newly played Omni Sacrifice artifact. And that leaves Potofreak at 4 Amber, still having not managed to forge his first key. Being well controlled by the deck of Zaxxon. Looking at a board state where it's not horrible, but it's certainly in Zaxxon's favor. And there is a second gateway to Dis. So he takes the 3 keys, sacrifices all of his creatures to blow up his opponent's creatures. I think that was probably wise there, especially with the Arise to follow it up. I'm not sure I would have necessarily called Dis there. Let's take a look. He has 2 Snufflegators and Niffleape or Nexus. Actually, no, Dis was perfectly fine there. The 2 Nexuses would have been tempting, but since it was already on a Dis turn, being able to play the discards back out right now, particularly coupled with the cards he had in his hand, means that he has a very dominant board state. And that is the power of Dis, people. Yes, it took him 4 chains to do it, but now he has a significant board presence over Zaxxon. Zaxxon does have 8 Amber, and not a whole lot in the Dis that's on the board that Potofreak can do to control that 8 Amber. Stealer of Souls gives himself Amber. These are both play abilities that can take Amber away, and of course Drumble. Drumble would work, but is already in play. And of course, that's because Zaxxon was waiting for the Gateway to Dis and Power Play to play Glorious Few. It's a direct counter to that board wipe plus a rise type play. For each creature your opponent controls in excess of you, gain Amber. When your opponent board wipes and then drops 6 creatures, it's worth 6 Amber. It can be ridiculously powerful. On the other hand, your opponent has 6 creatures to your none. So if it's not getting you to your 3rd key, your opponent's going to reap you out of the game. And that's exactly what happens there. He reaps across the board and uses Snudge to bounce the 1 creature that was on the board back to the hand. And I expect something very similar will happen on the following turn to bounce the Mighty Javelin, because Snudge can bounce a creature or artifact. Pingle Who Annoys. Elusive and deals 1 damage to each creature as it enters play. So it's Timmy. It's good old Timmy. So Potofreak is at 4 Amber to Zaxxon's 3. I would expect Snudge to bounce. With this board state, you have to call Dis. He calls Untamed. I think that's a mistake. With 6 creatures on the board, you call Dis and you reap across the board. Discard Save the Pack. This is one trap that I've seen in too many games playing on Crucible, is people fall into that did give him 2 Amber, but the trap of and a key charge. Okay, maybe the key charge makes it worth it. I still probably would have tried to stall and get the Keyforge naturally and then use key charge to win the game there. especially when he had the Dust Pixie in hand. Because if you reap across the board, very, very likely you're going to be able to do it. Although he could be counterplaying a bait and switch here. That's the only reason I think you use the key charge there rather than holding it for a game-winning play later. Is because if your opponent has bait and switch in this position, reaping across the board gives him enough amber to win, and then you've got to figure out how to combat that. Having not looked at these decks, I have no idea if there's a bait and switch, and of course, Poto Freak is probably a person of high integrity and hasn't looked either.